Hello there. Today I'm at Daumas Gassac, an estate in the Languedoc in the Hérault region, and I've been fortunate enough to attend a tasting here where we've tasted 27 of the 47 vintages of the Daumas Gassac red wine that have been produced. And they very kindly allowed me to video some tastings of some of these wines. One of the wines that stood out for me, one of the earlier wines, the 82, and as it's lost its label there, we can just see that the vintage has been scribbled on there in pen so they don't forget what that was, but it's been sitting here in the producer's cellars, so the wine I think is in lovely condition. And of the earlier wines, this was a wine that really stood out for me. It stood out because of its concentration. The estate here was founded, vineyards were pretty much cut from the garrigue, the local southern French scrub here, the sort of thyme and rosemary and various other bushes growing locally, by Ami Guibert with his wife Veronique and the family in the early 1970s. I think planting started in 1972 and their first vintage in 1978. Now the reason for planting was that they bought the house. It was a fairly dilapidated property that had been lived in by an old Frenchman, and his two sisters had lived with him. They'd had animals living in the house. There was no running water, there was no electricity. So when the Guiberts took over, they completely rebuilt the house, and the old mill that sat on the Gassac stream eventually became a winery. They discovered that the soil type at the bottom of the Gassac Valley here was soil that a friend of theirs, a soil scientist, compared to that was found in the Côte de Nuits in Burgundy. So an almost unique soil formation comprising fractured limestone and tiny chips of limestone in a red iron-rich silt. They were advised that this was the sort of soil on which you could create a Grand Cru. And that's what the family have done over the last 50 years or so. Rather than following the Burgundy example, in fact they planted predominantly Cabernet Sauvignon. And to plant this, they sought out old cuttings of what was a Massal selection that had been taken from Bordeaux, from Cru Classé vineyards, unknown which Cru Classé vineyards, but of cuttings that had been taken pre-phylloxera. So they sought out the highest quality possible vine stocks and set out to produce a wine. So 1982 is a fairly early vintage. We're looking at a wine that has 13.2% alcohol, is 73% Cabernet Sauvignon. As well as the Cabernet Sauvignon, there's 7.1% of Merlot, 6.7% of Tannat, 4.8% of Syrah, 4.1% of Malbec, 3.3% of Cabernet Franc, and 1% of other grape varieties going into this blend. So seemingly quite an eclectic blend, but really a Cabernet Sauvignon dominated wine that's softened by the accompaniment of these other varieties. So looking at it, the first thing that really stood out to me about the 82 amongst the lineup was it has a really lovely depth of colour. This is almost opaque. There's not a lot of diminution of colour to the rim here. It's a sort of an almost black ruby colour. The 13.1% alcohol is sufficient to be giving reasonable tears on the side of the glass there as I swirl it. The aromas have a rich dark fruit side. They also have a sort of a tertiary developed mushroom note. And then behind that I'm starting to get more than I'd seen previously in this wine. Notes of the garrigue. It's this sort of slightly dusty herbal notes of vegetation, that sort of rosemary and thyme, those sorts of notes there, all coming through on the nose there. It's a fairly powerful aroma. So let's have a taste. The fruit still seems rich and rounded. There's almost a juicy blackcurrant note. However, there's a dustier side to that. It's where those garrigue notes, the herbal notes come in, touches of spice. There's a fine tannic structure running across the whole thing. It's quite silky. There are some delicate top notes that are lifted by the good acidity. So you're getting sort of notes of rose petal and that sort of thing at the end there, along with a sort of slightly dusty, becoming slightly astringent grip at the finish there. 82 was a very warm vintage, and the wine's concentration that's resulted from that is evident here. I think this is a wine at full maturity, but at the same time I don't think there's particularly a hurry to drink it up. I suspect if you come back to this in 4 or 5 years' time, you'll find that it's in very much the same sort of state. Its acidity is such its fine structure is such that I think this will persist well. I mean, I'm fortunate here that this is a wine that's come straight from the producer's cellars. It's never been transported, it won't have been agitated or shipped through warm locations or anything like that. So it should be in perfect condition. Now, I note that the Wine Searcher average score for this wine is 89. I would probably rate the wine in my glass slightly higher than that, but then our aggregated critic score possibly includes older wines that haven't necessarily had such good storage, so it's possible that that's being a little unfair. I'd probably rate this as something like sort of a 91 out of 100 myself. So thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you found this an interesting tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. If you think that any of your friends might be interested, we'd be delighted if you share the video with them. If you'd like to watch more of these videos, do please sign up and follow our YouTube channel. It would be great to see that subscription there, have your support. If you have any comments you want to leave, please pop those in the comments box below. It'd be fantastic to see what you think about the tastings we're doing, the wines we're looking at, or anything else that relates to that. Most importantly, however, though, do please try and find some time and come and join us for another tasting in the near future, won't you? Bye for now.